Hi guys, welcome back to our next new agent video. In this session, we're going to talk about inputting a listing and then editing it for the additional information that you need to add. So it is going to be split up into a two-part video. So stay tuned and let's jump in. So the first thing you need to do before inputting a listing into the MLS is to ensure that you have a fully executed listing agreement. Once you have that, you're going to head over to the input screen of Matrix and then go to the input section. From there, you're going to want to click on the Add New option, and this is where it's going to give you the different options for the property type that you're going to market in. So in this example, we'll say that we are marketing in the condo townhouse option because I do want to show you guys how you can search for building names when you are inputting your listing. Now, you have a few different options here on how you can pull information in to start with. You have Start with a New Listing, Fill from an Existing Listing, and Fill from Realist Tax. Starting with a new listing is the least recommended option that I would give to you, just because that's going to allow you to start from scratch, but you are going to have to put in every single bit of information yourself, as opposed to being able to pull some information in. So, example, if this property has never been listed in the MLS before, if you fill from realist tax data, some of this information is already going to be plugged in for you. So that's why I would recommend, if a property has not been listed before, at least go in and do the fill from realist tax option. The other option you have here is fill from an existing listing. And the great thing about this option is that if you have previously listed this property before, you can pull in all of that data from your old listing, so you're not having to re-input everything, and you can just update the information. All you need is the actual MLS number. You can always try to search it in the MLS yourself if you want, but if you've had this listing before, it would just be easier to use that old MLS number to pull it up. Click that Fill From button, and it's going to pull all of your additional information from before that you added into the system. Then the most common option is Fill From Realist Tax. The benefit of that is it's pulling that public record data from the Realist platform, and it will allow you to generate information for properties that haven't been previously listed in the MLS. I highly recommend going by TMK number when you're pulling this information up, because you're going to only pull up one property. If your client has a very common name, trying to search by owner might prove a little bit difficult, and you're going to have to search through a bunch of different options. So I highly recommend reviewing the TMK number and plugging it in. I still recommend double checking to make sure that when you do enter the TMK number, the owner name is correct, the address is correct, and then you can fill that option. And as you can see, if I go to that additional information section, we do have that realist tax data in there, so at least it's a few less fields I have to fill out. Of course, you as the realtor are going to want to do your due diligence in making sure that this information is correct, and not necessarily just taking the information you see in Realist for what it is. This bar right here is known as your input wizard, and it's going to allow you to toggle between the different sections and add the information as needed. So the first section here I want to talk about is the different status that you're going to start with. So you have the option to start in incoming, active, and coming soon. The reason why the system defaults to active is because when you go into the different tabs, the sections that are yellow are the required fields that you need to fill out in order to make your listing active. So I always recommend make sure your listing starts in as active, so you know the fields that you do have to fill out. After that, you're going to come back to the status section and go to the incoming tab in order to submit your listing, so that you can go in and add the photos and things like that in order to make your listing live. So highly recommend going that option, and actually you have to go that option because this section here doesn't actually allow you to add in photos. And you do need at least one photo to take your listing active, but High Central MLS does recommend having a minimum of 5 when listing a property. The other option here is coming soon. So coming soon is that status where if you would like, you're able to market the listing only to MLS participants for 30 days prior to that listing going active. If you want more information on what the different statuses mean, you can always go to our High Central MLS knowledge base and type in keywords to find articles that could help you with inputting your listing. So in this example, we're trying to find out what the different statuses are. I'm going to start to type in the status keyword into the search bar, and I see right here this section that says listing statuses and their definitions. I can click on that and I can see what each status stands for. So active, under contract, pending, expired, hold, canceled, and sold. So we're going to change this back to active, and then we're going to move into the next section. In the agent information section, it's going to default to your listing agent ID, and it's going to allow you to add in a co-listing agent ID. So something to remember here is that if this co-listing agent is not a part of your office, they aren't going to have edit rights. However, if they are a part of your office, they will. Now, if your co-listing agent is not a member of High Central MLS, you can always use the agent ID number 99988. And if you want to click the refresh button, you'll be able to confirm that this is in fact the ID number for an agent who is not a member of High Central MLS. I highly recommend doing this even if you do have the MLS ID number, just because, we're humans. We might fat finger something and accidentally plug in the wrong MLS number. This is how we can make sure we add the right person the first time. If you don't have the agent's MLS ID number, but you do know their name, you can always search for them by name by clicking that Find a Co-listing Agent option. Once you click on that Find a Co-listing Agent option, you can search by agent ID, agent last name, office ID, agent phone, etc. So in this example, let's say I want to add Ed as my co-listing agent. I'm going to go ahead and start typing Taguba. And I'm going to click that Run Search option. And as I can see here, there's Edward Taguba. I can click Fill. And then once I do that, his agent ID and his co-listing agent name and office name is there. That's how I can confirm and move to the next step. From there, I'm going to click on the General tab, and that's where I'm going to start to input the rest of the information, right? So land recorded, listing type, listing date, agreement period, listing expiration date. And there's a lot of information to fill out here. So I just want to go over some of the main things that people trip up on or end up in our compliance training for. So one of the big ones is that listing date. So the main thing here is the agreement period begins date, and the listing date should be whatever is listed on the listing contract as the start date of when that listing is going to go active. So that could be anywhere in section A5 of when the listing period begins, or in section A10 where you list out when this listing is supposed to be marketed as active. So again, the listing date should be whenever the listing is going to be active in the MLS for the first day. Listing expiration date is going to be something that you can extend but not backdate. So you should always make sure that you are double checking the information you're inputting here. Because if you go like this, you can accidentally jump forward 2 years when you meant to jump forward 1 month. And so that's just something that you should keep in mind when you are inputting this information. The next section is the list price. So with this section here, Matrix doesn't actually capture the commas. So you do have to be very careful when you're entering your list price, because you don't want to have that reflection of a change in price once you've set this property to active. So if we're saying our property is $500,000, we would say that list price is $500,000. And then usually what I'll do is I will add those extra zeros and then highlight the last 3 zeros to confirm I'm looking at a $500,000 list price. As those numbers get further on, right, let's say we're talking 5 million, right? I add that extra zero. I can always go like this to see those first 3 zeros, and then I can use my mouse to confirm there's those next 3 zeros. I have a $5 million list price. So those are some tricks I use. Other agents may have other tricks, so feel free to ask your team, your brokerage on what tricks they use to make sure they have that accurate list price. Listing service, there is a difference between full service, limited service, and MLS entry only. We have a really good article on our MLS knowledge base that talks about the differences in any of these listing service options. It is important to note that you are the realtor if you are listing the property, so please keep that in mind when you're entering your listings. External URLs can be used if you have additional photos that you want to include in this listing, or you have additional virtual tours, you can add that information in here. Another field or another URL that gets added into this field is if it's a condo and you want to include the condo or association website for other agents to review. The important thing to remember there is with an external URL, it is only visible to members of the MLS. So you are taking the chance that the buyer's agent, whoever's reviewing your property, may not send that information to their client, but just know that this information here isn't readily accessible to the public. Compensation and percentage or dollar sign, you're going to add this information in. The biggest thing to remember here is that this is how much you're going to be offering the cooperating brokerage. So it's not the total amount of compensation. It's what you're going to offer to someone who brings a potential buyer to this sale. Okay, I have seen a few times where it'll be 5% here, 6% here, and I have to double check with the agent and confirm. Are you actually offering the potential buyer's agent 5% of the commission for this property? And then they have to go in and change it. So please keep that in mind as you add in that compensation number. The next section here is the virtual tour. So we have this option called Immo Viewer Tour, yes or no. If you select that option, what's going to happen is it's going to automatically generate after 24 hours a virtual tour or a virtual slideshow of the first 15 photos that you have listed for this property. The other option you have here is to load in your own virtual tour for this property. So if you purchased a virtual tour from a third-party company, as long as that is an unbranded URL, an unbranded website, and an unbranded video, that URL can go into this link here. Now, the next section here is the address section. So luckily, because I filled from Realist Tax, the street name and address is already there. However, if I had just decided to go the route of filling this listing from scratch, I would fill in this information myself. I would click this autofill street fields option. And then once I have that selected, I can go in and start to type the name of the street. So one of the examples that people always struggle with is St. Louis, right? Because is it ST? Is it ST period? Or is it spelled out Saint, right? So the easier way to find this property is to do an asterisk sign because it's the same searching shortcuts that we use for searching for properties in a regular MLS search. I'm going to start to type in Lewis. I'm going to do an asterisk on the end, and I'm going to run that search. What's going to happen is it's going to pull up that street for me. I see St. Louis Drive, Oahu, on Oahu. I can click the fill button, and that's going to pull that street name into my listing. For this example, since we do have the correct street name in here, what I want to check is that this map pin is correct, because that has also happened as well, where the map pin is in the incorrect spot. So how to fix that is you're going to come over here and set latitude and longitude manually. And then from there, what's going to happen once you've clicked that is you can click on the pin and drag it around to the correct place that it needs to be. So maybe this property is all the way over here instead. I can click it, drag it, click done, and that's going to save that map pin moving forward for this listing. All right, let's move on to the additional information section. Here, you're going to be able to fill out the information for this property. This section, usually people don't have any challenges with. I would say the one part is that autofill for the building name field, because with Matrix, you have to spell the building name exactly how we have it in the system. Otherwise, it's going to say that there's an error. So what I recommend here when you're adding your building name, just click on autofill building name option and then start to type in the name of the building. So again, if you're not sure 100% of the spelling, just start to add in, do the asterisk sign and start to add in the parts of the building name that you are for sure should be spelled correctly. So maybe in this example, it's Wilder. For me, I'm going to do Wilder asterisk, run search, and then this is where I can see, oh, 999 Wilder. That is the building I am looking for. So I'm going to click that fill option, and that's going to pull in that building name for me. We're going to move on to the next tab, which is that features section. And in here, you're going to reflect exactly what shows up on your profile sheets. So you're going to want to make sure that anything that matches your property's listing has been checked off on those profile sheets so that you can make sure that anytime someone's running a search, that it will pop up for your listing. The biggest one that I see missed a lot is the section for property frontage, and that's because that's not a required field. But it is in your interest as well as your client's interest that if your property is actually a oceanfront property, to select that option, because spin it around, right? You're a buyer's agent and you're trying to find properties for your client that is oceanfront. If you want to select this option, you want to make sure when you're running your search, Matrix is only going to pull up those properties that have this box checked. So it's always good practice, regardless of whether these fields are required or not. Make sure that your seller is selecting every box that correctly matches and accurately describes their property. Okay, you've got a ton of options here. So make sure you're working with them to accurately add in all of these things that match your listing. Moving on to the remarks tab, this is where you're going to add in your public remarks and your agent remarks. Now, these rules are pretty self-explanatory, right? Public remarks, that should have zero branding, zero contact information, and that's because it's visible to the public. If you do need to add things like your listing agent's contact information because they are not an MLS member, you would add that information into the agent remarks section because that is only visible and available to members of High Central MLS. The next section is the Lockbox tab. This is where you're able to let agents know how to access the property. If you're going to be using a lockbox or not using a lockbox, if you're going to be requesting one from the MLS. So part of your member benefits is that you are able to borrow a lockbox for the life of your listing so that you don't have to purchase one of these lockboxes yourself. You don't have to worry about maintaining it. All you have to do is borrow it and return it once the listing has been completed. So all you do is say, I request a lockbox from High Central MLS, click to review that lockbox user agreement. Once you've read it, you say, yes, I have read that agreement. And then within 24 hours, you'll get instructions on where you can pick up that box and return it at a later date. Some of you may have offices that actually are hubs that hold lockboxes, and one of your office coordinators might reach out to you directly to coordinate picking up a box for you. So highly recommend that program. If you want some more information on it, just click on this MLS lockbox URL and it will show you more information about the program. Okay, so we're almost there. The next tab here is the rooms tab, and this is where you're able to highlight specific rooms in your property. So an example here might be the wine cellar, and we're going to say that it's in the basement. And here we might add a quick little description about that area, and you can go in and add additional rooms as needed. The next section here is the listing visibility section. So this section here is going to pertain to what information gets shared with the public. So it's very important that you go over this with your client so that they know where their listing is going to show up depending on how they select these options and how these options are going to affect where these properties show up. So for this example, allow this listing to be displayed outside the MLS across the internet. So in this option here, that's saying if they say yes to this, this listing is going to show everywhere. If they say no to that, then this listing is only going to be visible to realtors and their clients who have access to High Central MLS's system. The next section here is allow websites to display the address to this listing. So whether or not your client wants that address to show up on their property when people see it online. A reason they may not want that information to show because they're still living in that home and they don't want strangers driving past while they are there. The next section here is allow websites to give their users the ability to comment on the listing. Why this might be something your seller may not want is because while it does allow for positive comments to happen, it does also allow for negative comments to be added next to your seller's property. The last option here is whether you want to allow websites to display an automated valuation model. The positive here is that maybe it will match exactly what you've listed it at. The potential downside of doing that is that it can either show that you have either listed this property as less than what they're offering, or you've listed it as more than what they're valuing your property at. So those are some important considerations to talk through with your client. The next section after that is the exempted listing section. So what is an exempted listing? An exempted listing is a listing that is exempt from visibility to the entire MLS. So situations in which an exempted listing might be used is if you are representing a high profile client who doesn't want to let people know that they are selling their property. In that instance, you can go in and select an exempted listing option and then select the exemption type you're looking for. Now the system is going to automatically default to no. So this is where you're going to come in here and change it to yes. Select the exemption type you're looking to add, brokerage visibility or no visibility, right? If you want to know what those different types are, you can go down to the notes section and read what no visibility means and what brokerage only visibility means. If you want further instructions on how to input an exempted listing and maintain your compliance, I highly recommend checking out this High Central MLS Zendesk article we created regarding the exempted listing process. Okay, so now that we have all of these tabs filled out, I'm going to go back to the status section here, and I'm going to change this from active to incoming so that I can save the listing, go back in and add photos and open house information, things of that nature. I want to show you really quickly here, because I have it set to active now. If I try to submit the listing, it's not going to go through because I don't have all of the required fields filled out, and I also don't have the photos added in, which at least one photo is required to take this listing active. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on that incoming option, and then I'm going to click submit listing. What's going to happen at that point is I'm going to see listing has been successfully added. It's going to generate that MLS number for me, and then I can click into this this MLS number directly to go in and add the information that I need to. So that is how you guys can add a listing into the MLS to generate your MLS number so that you can go in, edit the listing, and add everything else to turn this listing active. Okay, so that is how you generate an MLS number for your listing. If you stayed the whole time, thanks for sticking with me. Come back into the next video where we're going to talk about how to add in the rest of the information and edit the listing moving forward. So see you in the next one. Bye.